You ever notice how people only care when it's too late? They wait, always waiting for the crash, the breakup, the diagnosis, the explosion. Then suddenly, now they want the truth. Now they want answers. Now they're ready to listen. But before that, too busy, too distracted, too comfortable in the illusion that tomorrow's guaranteed. Delayed awareness is self-inflicted damage, not a mistake, not bad luck, not fate. It's you, ignoring the fire while it's still a spark, pretending the cracks in the walls are just character, laughing off the warning signs like they're background noise. Because deep down, you already knew. You just didn't want to know. You didn't want to see it yet. It's easier that way. Easier to stall. Easier to play dumb. But ignorance isn't free. It racks up interest. And by the time the truth kicks down your door, oh, it's not just knocking. It's burning the whole place down. People love to act shocked when things collapse. How did this happen? They ask, wide-eyed, innocent. But come on, you saw the red flags. You felt the tension. You had the gut feeling. You just muted it, numbed it, talked yourself out of it. You said, it's probably nothing. You said, I'll deal with it later. And now later is here and it's screaming in your face. That's not life being unfair. That's you refusing to listen until the volume was too loud to ignore. It's funny. Everyone wants clarity, but no one wants the responsibility that comes with it. Because once you know, you have to act. You can't unsee. You can't unknow. So people delay knowing. They delay the mirror. They delay the hard questions because they're not ready to give up the illusion. They're not ready to admit the job is killing them. The relationship is fake. The dream is dead. The habits are poison. They'd rather suffer slowly than wake up violently. But that delay, that costs. That's damage. That's time you don't get back. You think time is generous? Think it waits for you to catch up? It doesn't, it moves mercilessly. And while you're sitting there convincing yourself that you're not ready to face the truth is rearranging your life without asking for permission. Because reality doesn't care about your schedule. It doesn't care about your feelings. It just is. And when you delay facing it, you're handing over the steering wheel to chaos, letting the crash build quietly in the background. Self-inflicted damage is the most painful kind, because you can't blame anyone else. You can't scream at fate or point fingers at the universe. It was you. You held the match. You watched the rope fray. You stood on the tracks and heard the train. And still you said, not yet. That not yet is where the damage lives. That space between knowing and doing, seeing and moving. That's where things rot. That's where pain brews. And then comes the breakdown. The moment it all caves in. That's when people cry, scream, beg for another shot. But that's not pain from surprise. That's pain from delay. That's grief over time you could have used. That's anger at yourself for not acting when it was still fixable, still manageable, still quiet. But no, you waited for the explosion. You waited until it was dramatic enough to demand your attention. And now you're sitting in the ruins calling it bad luck. It's not luck. It's avoidance. It's what happens when you keep snoozing the alarm until the whole house is on fire. People love comfort more than clarity. They'll keep lying to themselves if it means they don't have to feel uncomfortable for 5 minutes. But that lie adds up. It turns into years, into consequences, into regret. And regret, that one's a slow burn. It sticks. It whispers at night. It reminds you that you could have known. You just didn't want to. The world doesn't owe you gentle truths. It throws bricks. And you either wake up when they land near your feet or wait until one lands on your chest. There's always a choice. Always a moment where you feel it. That flicker, that gut punch, that tiny voice saying, something's wrong. That's your chance. That's your window. You take it, or you let it close. And if you let it close, don't pretend the fallout was a surprise. You built it, brick by brick, delay by delay, lie by lie. The harshest truths don't come dressed in warnings. They come as patterns, repeats, déjà vu. The same mistake with different faces. And you keep playing along, keep acting like it's random, like life has it out for you, but deep down you know. You know you've been dodging something loud, something important. And every time you choose not to face it, not to know it, you add another scar that didn't have to be there. Another wound you handed to yourself. Truth doesn't wait for your convenience. It doesn't check your calendar or ask if now's a good time. It doesn't tiptoe into your life with a polite knock and a bouquet of flowers. No, it kicks the door in. It shows up muddy, bleeding, wild-eyed. And it doesn't care if you're busy, doesn't care if you're not ready, doesn't care if it ruins your plans, your reputation, your carefully arranged little lie. Truth's not here to fit your narrative. It's here to dismantle it. People think they can dodge it, postpone it, hit the snooze button. They live like they've got all the time in the world, like reality's gonna just sit there, patiently waiting for them to finally get it. But truth has a schedule of its own, and it's not synced to your comfort. You don't get to ask it to come back later when things settle down, because things don't settle, they escalate. They build pressure, and when you ignore the truth for too long, it erupts. In public, in ugly ways, in moments that tear the mask off your face whether you're ready or not. And oh, people hate that. They want truth to be gentle, convenient, digestible. They want it wrapped in a nice quote, maybe on a coffee mug, something they can repost without changing a damn thing about their life. But real truth, it's brutal. It's inconvenient. It doesn't whisper, it yells. And the longer you pretend you don't hear it, the louder it gets, until it's no longer a message, it's a consequence. People confuse delay with control. They think by pushing truth aside, they're winning, like, not today. But truth isn't playing hide and seek. It's playing chess. Long game. It's watching you make moves you think are clever, adding distractions, stacking excuses, clinging to comfort, and it just waits, smiling, because it knows sooner or later the game flips, and when it does, the truth doesn't just appear, it explodes. And suddenly, all your detours collapse under the weight of the very thing you thought you escaped. See, truth's not your enemy. It doesn't come to destroy, it comes to reveal, to rip off the Band-Aid, to show you what's bleeding underneath. But people hate the sting, so they pretend. They build fake lives on false peace, hoping that if they ignore the cracks, the structure will hold. But it never does. It can't. Because anything built on a lie is already falling. It just hasn't hit the ground yet. You want to live free? Then get uncomfortable. Real uncomfortable. Look at the parts of your life you've been carefully avoiding. The habits you defend, the relationships you justify, the masks you wear so no one sees the real damage. That's where truth lives, not in the light, but in the shadows. And it's not waiting for you to feel brave. It's waiting for you to get honest. Because truth doesn't respond to your fear. It responds to your surrender. Do you ever notice how the truth shows up at the worst possible time? Right when you're about to seal the deal, start something new, step into the spotlight, that's when it crashes the party. Not because it's cruel, but because it refuses to let you build on a foundation that can't hold you. And you can try to silence it, cover it up with noise, with busyness, with a fake smile. But it doesn't go away. It grows in the silence, in the spaces you ignore. It becomes a shadow that follows you into every room. And then one day, boom, it speaks. Loud, sharp, public. And suddenly you're exposed. Not because the truth hates you, but because it loves you too much to let you keep pretending. It's the only thing in your life that won't lie to you. The only thing that doesn't care about your image. It's ruthless, yes, but it's also the only way out. Because nothing changes until something's seen fully. No filters, no spin. You think you've got time. Think you'll face it when things slow down, when it hurts a little less, when the timing feels right. But the truth doesn't wait for your perfect moment. It creates the moment. And it doesn't knock softly. It breaks the silence, shatters illusions, and demands you choose. Keep living the lie that feels safe, or step into the truth that feels like fire. Truth doesn't show up when you're ready. It shows up when it's needed. And if you won't face it now, it'll find a way to face you. Not out of cruelty, not for drama, but because everything that's false in your life is holding you hostage. And truth doesn't negotiate with fear. It just breaks the chains. Trusting fully means surrendering control. Not the cute kind of surrender people pretend to do when they say, "I leave it in God's hands," while still clutching the steering wheel with white knuckles. No. Real surrender is violent. It rips, it tears. It breaks the part of you that needs to know how it all ends. It kills the illusion that you were ever in control to begin with. That's the part people don't like to admit. They want miracles on their terms, peace without sacrifice, faith without bleeding for it. Everyone loves the idea of trust until it costs them something. Until they have to close their eyes and walk into the storm without a backup plan. That's when the shaking starts. That's when the voices creep in. The ones that say, maybe this isn't wise. Maybe you should wait. Maybe this is reckless. But trust doesn't ask for a weather report. It walks straight into the thunder and calls it holy, because trusting fully means burning the blueprint, tossing the script, stepping into the unknown without asking for a map. You want to know why most people never make it out of the cycle? Why they keep repeating the same patterns, praying the same prayers, crying the same tears? Because they never actually let go. They say the words, but their hands are still wrapped around the old story, around their version of how things should go, around the lie that if they just try harder, work smarter, or hustle longer, they'll control the outcome. But real trust is letting that outcome die. It's standing at the edge of everything you built and saying, if it falls, it falls. If I lose, I lose. But I'm not the one holding it together anymore. And that terrifies people, because control feels safe even when it's an illusion, even when it's toxic. People would rather die in the familiar than risk living in the unknown. They'd rather stay in the broken thing they understand than surrender to a healing that doesn't follow their rules. So they tighten their grip, they overthink, they panic plan. They say they trust, but only as long as it feels manageable, only as long as God's plan aligns with their expectations. The moment it doesn't, suddenly it's silence, doubt, rage. They call it spiritual warfare, but sometimes it's just ego clashing with surrender. You ever try holding sand in a closed fist? The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. That's control. That's what happens when you try to dictate how your life unfolds. You don't protect it, you lose it. You suffocate it. You stall the very thing you were asking for because you couldn't accept that it wouldn't arrive in the package you pictured. Trusting fully means getting okay with not knowing, with not understanding, with not getting your way, and still walking forward anyway. And don't think trust makes you look graceful. No, it'll make you look insane, like you've lost it, like you're reckless, naive, delusional, because you'll be moving when logic says stop. You'll be building when you don't have the tools, speaking when you have no proof. Trust makes you a fool before it makes you free. That's the tax. You have to let them talk, let them laugh, let them think you're lost while you're being led by something bigger than sin. That's the kind of surrender most people avoid, the kind that costs your image, your pride, your explanation. People want safety more than truth. They'll trade their freedom for predictability every time. But predictability is just a prettier word for prison. You can't control and trust at the same time. That's the real tension. That's the split that keeps people stuck. They want the outcome of faith with the insurance policy of fear. They want open doors, but not if they don't know what's on the other side. So they knock, but they don't enter. They pray, but they don't move. They hope, but only from a distance. That's not trust. That's control with a costume on. And maybe the worst part, most people don't even know they're doing it. They think they've surrendered just because they feel tired, just because they've said, God, I give it to you 100 times. But surrender isn't in the words, it's in the silence that follows. The silence where you don't rush to fix it, the space where you stop trying to force it. That's where trust lives. in the pause, in the release, in the moment you realize that holding it all together was never your job in the first place. You want to see what you're really made of? Let go. Don't peek, don't nudge, don't micromanage, just fall. And if your stomach flips, good. That means it's working. That means something real is finally happening. Something you didn't plan, something you can't control, something holy enough to terrify you into finally waking up. Doubt screams louder when you're closest to breakthrough. It doesn't whisper. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder and ask politely. It kicks the door open, smirking, arms crossed, asking you, "You sure about this?" Right when you're about to step out. Right when your foot's hovering over the edge of that old life. That's when doubt shows up, dressed like logic, sounding just like your voice, spinning fear into something that looks like wisdom, telling you to be careful, to slow down, to think it through. But what it's really doing is trying to drag you back into the cage you've been rattling for years. See? Doubt has perfect timing, doesn't waste itself on the hopeless or the lazy. No, it saves its sharpest knives for the ones who are about to change something, for the ones who are one decision away from never being the same again. Because doubt isn't random, it's a defense mechanism. Your brain, your ego, the scared little version of you hiding in the dark, they all send in doubt as the last line of defense. It's the final flare. Because if you move now, if you trust now, it's over for the old you. And the old you doesn't go down without a fight. And oh, it fights dirty. It drags out every failure, every time you tried and fell flat, every voice that told you you're not enough, every memory soaked in fear, in embarrassment, in pain. Doubt lines them up like ghosts in a courtroom, and suddenly you're on trial, not for what you've done, but for what you're about to do, for daring to believe this time could be different, for thinking that maybe, just maybe, you're not crazy for hoping again. And it's funny, isn't it? How real it feels, how convincing. Like maybe this feeling is God telling you to stop. Like maybe the anxiety is a sign. But what if it's not? What if it's just the resistance that always shows up before the dam breaks? What if it's the storm before the birth, the shaking before the breakthrough? But nobody teaches you that. Nobody warns you that sometimes the fear gets louder right before it loses its grip. They tell you to trust, but they don't tell you how brutal that trust gets when you're almost there. When you're inches away from the thing you've cried for, begged for, bled for. That's when everything starts screaming. The world gets noisy. The silence gets heavy. Doubt doesn't just creep in, it performs, it puts on a show, a full circus. And you're center stage with shaky hands and a heart that doesn't know whether to jump or run. Most people run, not because they didn't want it, but because they didn't expect the noise. They thought breakthrough would feel peaceful, serene, like some divine sunrise moment. But breakthrough feels like chaos. It feels like dying. Like being ripped out of your old skin, and doubt plays the violin while it happens, trying to soothe you back into the familiar, into safety, into smallness, into safety, into smallness. But if you've made it this far, if the doubt's gotten this loud, that means something's breaking. That means the old shell is cracking. And it knows. Oh, it knows. That's why it's fighting so hard. Because doubt isn't there to stop you from failing. It's there to stop you from changing, from stepping into something that can't be undone, from becoming someone who doesn't need the cage anymore. And make no mistake, the cage is comfortable, it's decorated, familiar. It has your name on the door. You've lived there long enough to convince yourself it's home. But every time you get close to walking out, doubt reminds you of the rent you owe. The cost of freedom, the price of peace. And most people, they can't afford it. Not because it's too expensive, but because they're still counting the cost in fear instead of truth. So the next time doubt screams, maybe you don't fight it, maybe you just listen close. Not to the words, but to the timing. Ask yourself, why now? Why this loud? Why this specific voice? This specific fear? Right before everything shifts. Because sometimes the noise isn't a warning, sometimes it's just the alarm going off in the prison you're about to walk out of. Doubt's job is to make you question your own becoming, to convince you that your survival depends on staying the same, but you know better now, or at least part of you does. The part that's still breathing, still crawling, still trying. That part hears the screaming and doesn't flinch anymore. That part knows the noise means the door's about to open. Partial trust is just disguised fear. Oh, they don't call it that, no. No. They give it prettier names. Wisdom, discernment, balance. They wrap it in logic and tie a bow of maturity around it as if fear doesn't know how to dress up nice when it wants to sneak past the guards. But deep down it's fear. Cold, calculating, dressed in a three-piece suit, smiling as it talks you out of the very thing you were born to step into. You see it in their eyes, that flicker, that hesitation. They say they trust, say it loud, say it often, post about it, hashtag it, but watch them move, or don't, because they rarely do move. They dip a toe in, but never both feet. They open the door just a crack, just enough to say they opened it, just enough to feel brave without being brave. They keep one eye on the exit, one hand on the safety net, one excuse tucked neatly in their back pocket just in case things don't go as planned. That's not trust. That's a carefully managed illusion. And the funny part, they actually believe it. They convince themselves that a half step is better than no step, that a little trust still counts. But let me ask you something. What happens to a bridge if it's only half built? You step out on that thing, and it doesn't matter how sincere you are, how hard you pray, how much you want it to hold, you fall. Every time. Because trust, real trust, is all or nothing. You're either on the bridge or you're not. You're either leaping or you're waiting. There's no such thing as safe surrender. But people love safety. Oh, they worship it. They'll trade power for predictability, purpose for comfort, callings for routine. Also, they can avoid the terrifying idea that they're not in control. And so they offer God their hearts, but not their hands, their plans, but not their timing, their praise, but not their timing, their praise, but not their path. And they wonder why everything feels stuck, why nothing shifts, why the breakthrough keeps brushing past them like a ghost that never stops to say hello. It's because fear is still sitting in the driver's seat, pretending it's just being realistic. Fear doesn't need to shout, it just needs to whisper. What if this doesn't work? And suddenly, you're back to the drawing board, back to analyzing, overthinking, negotiating with heaven like you're some kind of divine lawyer, trying to control an outcome that was never yours to write. Partial trust sounds like this: I'll go, but only if it makes sense. I'll believe, but only if there's a sign. I'll stay, but only until it gets uncomfortable. That's not trust. That's fear in costume. That's control with a halo on. That's the kind of trust that folds under pressure, runs at the first sign of trouble, collapses when silence lasts too long. And it's dangerous because it feels like faith. It looks like obedience, but it doesn't hold when the storm comes. People like to think they're waiting on God, but a lot of the time, God's waiting on them. Waiting for them to drop the act, to let go of the backup plan, to burn the exit strategy, to stop hedging their bets like he's some unreliable gambler. Trust doesn't come with a refund. It's messy, risky, wild. It'll make you look stupid, make you look lost. But that's the point, because you don't get to control the story and call it faith. And let's be honest, partial trust is exhausting. It wears you down because you're constantly holding tension. One foot in purpose, one foot in fear, trying to look confident while internally panicking, smiling on the outside, bargaining on the inside, saying yes with your lips but maybe with your posture. That's why you're tired. That's why it feels like you're always stuck between something you can't explain and something you're too scared to leave behind. But here's the real kicker. Deep down, you know. You feel the gap. You know you're not fully in. And it eats at you. Quietly, slowly, the way rust eats metal. Because you can't lie to your soul. You can fake faith for a while, but eventually life will test the strength of whatever you built. And if you only trusted halfway, if you only leaned in when it felt good, if you only said yes with conditions, then the test won't hold, and neither will you. So maybe the fear isn't that God won't catch you. Maybe the fear is that you were never really willing to jump. Maybe the scariest thing isn't the risk. It's the fact that you've gotten so good at avoiding it that you forgot how to believe in the first place. Maybe the pain isn't in trusting, it's in pretending you ever really did.